Welcome to the PH Nutrition Podcast. Today I am delighted to be joined by Coach Tom. How are you, buddy?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. Hope you're well.
I'm very well, mate. I'm very well. And we also have Coach Chloe on the podcast. How are you, Chloe?
I'm great, thanks. This is exciting. Good. Hey, guys.
Good stuff. Right, today's topic is reasons that you are not losing weight. Now, this is a common thing that we want people to understand. Look, it's not a linear process. It's quite challenging to lose weight at for an extended period of time. But it's also, there's going to be bumps in the road, and there might be things that people potentially don't realise that might be blocking their progress. So we're going to go through some. Tom and Chloe are going to give us their insights, some that they've seen regularly come up with clients. So hopefully this is going to give you, let's say, some guidance, and maybe as we go through them, you can pick one or two out and be like, you know what, I definitely need to focus on doing that. So Tom, let's kick us off. What's one reason people might not be losing weight?
Okay, this is something I commonly see, particularly maybe when we take clients on during like an early part of their process. Working with us is often comes down to, I would say, a little bit of kind of consistency and understanding that, if a week is 7 days and a month is, say, 30, 31 days, how consistent are you being, particularly when I'm going to talk about here is like Monday to Thursday versus Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday is 42% of your week. And often people talk in the fitness industry, don't they, about the 80-20 rule, right? We don't expect, most of the people that we work with are not professional athletes. They're everyday people, they've got jobs, they've got kids, families, social lives. So we want people to enjoy what they eat and drink. But obviously, if your goal is fat loss and you're trying to lose weight, you have to be aware of what you do at the weekend. You can't just kind of check out of MyFitnessPal come Friday lunchtime. Yeah. Open it up again Monday morning and always expect that you're going to be making progress. So those kind of Monday to Thursday dieters, people have got their ducks in line, they're quite maybe good discipline, they've got their go-to meals during the week, but for one reason or another, whether it's a bit of fatigue or social situations or just a change in circumstances, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I think can really make or break someone's nutrition plan.
Why do you think that people struggle? Why do you think people are on plan Monday to Thursday, and why do you think they struggle at weekends?
I think one is change of routine. I think, if you go to work and you have a shift pattern, you probably plan your meals in around when you go to work, when you go to the gym, you pick the kids up, things like that. Suddenly we get to the weekend and there's a lack of structure. So maybe you get up a little bit later or you're going out for lunch, and that's where things can maybe just kind of spiral out of control.
Yeah, that's
and
the
maybe
thing,
on the flip side, people have a meal on and maybe I think as well, like on a Friday evening, let's say you do go out for a meal, people then take one meal and then kind of write off the whole rest of the weekend.
Yeah,
rather
definitely.
than just looking at that one meal individually and just chalking it off and picking up again Saturday. Like I say, they kind of write it off and they'll go, I'm sure we've all said it, I'll start again Monday.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? Like the 80-20 rule it works if your 20% is not so horrendous that it negates the 80% that you're good. Or, like you say, it isn't 20%, it's 38% or 48% or whatever it is. So, I think having that balance is definitely something that we want people to be doing. But, like you say, it's just having that little bit of awareness that if it's one meal, that's cool, but you've got to get back on. I think that if you can do that, then you can hit the ground running Monday rather than having to, oh my God, I've got to be super restrictive Monday, and then Monday, Tuesday, it's really, you're only actually kind of dieting or on plan from probably Wednesday because you're just trying to offset your weekend. Chloe, I know you're in a phase at the moment where you're prepping for kind of competitions and stuff. Like, how do you approach weekends?
I completely get the going off at the weekend thing, because I think food is so emotional, isn't it? At the weekend, you've got like that feeling of, it's the weekend, celebration, have fun. It's such a different feeling. Like, I find if I ever, eat a little bit more, it's often because I'm excited or I'm celebrating something. And I feel like, especially with bank holidays and stuff, maybe people eat more at the weekend because they're wrapped up in that celebration of like, oh, it's Friday, or it's Saturday, or it's Sunday, so we tend to eat more. But for me, I just try and I prep all my food ahead of time for the weekend, and I find that keeps me really on track. And I just look at the weekend as the same as the week as much as possible. Like, I just look at it as the same. It's the same thing. Like, even if my schedule isn't different, even if I'm working, I just make sure that I'm like, right, I'm eating at my times that I usually eat and just prepping everything in advance. I think if you plan it, it's fine. If I have a day, like a Saturday where I haven't planned my food, then I'm probably not going to eat on plan because I haven't planned it out in advance. It's just planning it in advance, I think, as well.
Yeah, I think, you know, me and Tom, we put together some posts on Instagram, midweek meal prep, isn't it? Like, people prep Sundays and then they run out by Thursday, and then everything's a little bit random. And when it's random, it's not controlled, and, you know, you're often going to make poor choices. I think, they say, having a little bit of planning and a little bit of kind of, oh, well, I only do the food shop on a Sunday, so then you're scratching around making poor choices Friday, Saturday. That's a really key thing that helps people kind of stay on track. And food timings, like you said, Chloe, that's definitely something I do personally. Try to stick to regular-ish eating patterns and times, even over the weekend. One thing I do want to mention just before we move on to the next point is, for people that are dieting, I think sometimes weekends can often then put them off track. If they're too restrictive, if they're too restricted in the week, so then all of a sudden they build up, you know, they eat too little, and then they're just looking forward to the weekends when they can just kind of be like, oh, well, I've been really good all week, I'll overindulge at the weekends. Where our approach is to kind of maybe give people a little bit more food in the week so that they don't bank this hunger and they don't get these cravings and everything, and then the weekends isn't like a splurge because you've actually been all right in the week. And that's definitely something that we found to be, you know, helpful for clients.
Yeah, I think as well, like having those, I think some people view certain foods as only available on the weekend.
Yeah.
If you even like having like a pizza on a Wednesday or something, if you want to have half a pizza for dinner, don't be like, oh, well, it's Wednesday. Well, okay, just have it, because then otherwise you're going to eat like maybe 4 pizzas on Saturday night or something like that. So it's foods as well, isn't it? Like certain foods you see as week foods or weekend foods. It's just food.
Yeah. Absolutely right.
I think taking control and making the decisions and always planning something in, whether you're going to plan what you're going to eat or even you're going to identify the situation where you're going to eat off plan, I often find to be very beneficial for clients, because they then, like I say, it's not then random and, you know, everything's a little bit out of control and it's 3 plates of food at the barbecue. It's, if they plan, that's the brunch I'm going to eat off plan, that's the dinner I'm going to have out, whether it's a Wednesday night or a Sunday morning, they go into it feeling a bit more controlled, they enjoy that meal, and then they kind of have less guilt out the other end and just pick back up on their plan when they're ready to do so.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, mate. Top stuff. Chloe, what's the next point that we got on the list?
So I've got overestimating your calorie output. I think that this is a really common one, especially if people wear like Fitbits and Apple Watches and things like that. We think we're burning like loads and loads and loads of calories, so we end up eating more. Obviously, if we're tracking or whatever, we overestimate the amount we're putting out. So we're like, well, I can eat more food, and we're actually not burning that much. So we're not even at maintenance. We might even be in a surplus if we end up trying to match those calories we've burnt. And then, you know, we're not in a deficit. So I think that can be a massive thing. One of my friends actually came to me the other day and she was like, oh, you know, well, I can eat this many calories today because I've burnt 1,000 calories on my MyZone just in my workout. And I was like, I don't think you've burnt 1,000 calories in one workout on your MyZone.
No, yeah. I mean, the inaccuracies of fitness trackers is well documented now, isn't it? Like, it's a good marker, but they're not accurate, are they? And I think the type of exercise can massively make a difference on that. Like, if you're doing CrossFit definitely. Or if you're doing, like, you know, something else, it's quite challenging for the tracker to actually give you an accurate output. So yeah, eating back calories is a dangerous thing. But I'd say overestimate them at the start, because like people would punch these into a calorie calculator and be like, oh, I'm training 11 hours a week, or I'm doing this many steps, or I'm doing that, whatever. I think, like I say, sometimes that is definitely giving them people a too high of a target, and then they're expecting to lose weight, and then they don't necessarily see that reflect in the scales. Yeah, for sure.
Would you recommend that people err on the side of caution then when it comes to like step counts and number of sessions per week if they are, you know, looking at a macro calculator right now?
I think so. Like, I think you've got to kind of be careful, because we don't want to get into the position where we're in too much of a deficit, because we always want to be dieting on the highest calories we can possibly diet on, right? Because we want to be healthy, we want to feel good. We don't want to feel horrendous when we're trying to lose fat. We can feel pretty decent most of the time. But I think definitely better, like, to just, if don't use, your data from a fitness tracker, just think, maybe go on, maybe like, okay, well, have I done, about half an hour of exercise? Maybe just reduce it a little bit. If you're doing an hour in the gym, you're not training for that whole hour, are you? So maybe bring that down a little bit. And yeah, definitely be a little bit under is a good thing. And you can always take it up a little bit if you need to, if you lose weight super fast. I think it's really important to remember as well. Just because you start on a certain amount of calories, you can always make little tweaks based on how you're feeling. It doesn't have to be like, super high or super low.
Yeah. I think there's two really good points there. The overestimating how much output people do in classes is very common. We wrote stuff about CrossFit classes as well, especially when it's really high skill sessions. You're going into, I've trained 7 days, 6 sessions this week. But actually, in that session, there was hang snatch and one snatch for 8 minutes. And then there was a 6-minute AMRAP. And your skill level isn't actually at the level where you're going to have a high output in those workouts, because you're just on the training bar or you're just doing movement patterns. So, there you're like, I've trained 6 days. So you enter that in on a calculator and it will give you quite a higher output, because it's going to times it by the physical activity level. And I think that's where it is dangerous. But Chloe, you made a really good point there. Like, it's a starting point. It's where you need to start. Track your progress, energy levels, recovery from exercise, energy in training, out of training, what's your weight doing, what's your hunger levels, and then make small adjustments. I think all of these calculators and everything else are just a starting point. But I think you do need to take a bit more of an objective view to be like, don't necessarily just put everything onto a Fitbit or a Apple Watch, and also then maybe have a little look at your sessions. Now, if you're going in and doing a proper hour on a spin bike or something, then there isn't much that you're not doing. You're going to be pushing quite hard. So I think averaging it out, like I say, is a good idea across the week. So if you're training 6 days and a few of them are more skill-based, then maybe put 4 hours a week as your actual, starting point. I think that's going to be give you probably a more accurate number to start with. Great. Tom, hit us with the next one, big man.
Okay, I'm going to talk about something that we call microcheating. And again, this is something I see commonly with clients.
I do this.
We're not pointing fingers, but everyone does it.
we're not pointing fingers, but everyone's now listening to Chloe. Yeah. Yeah, microcheating. Again, it's something I commonly see with clients where maybe we get them to take pictures of a food diary, or they're tracking their food on MyFitnessPal, and there's often a difference between what you track and what you record and what potentially you eat and drink. Now this might be stuff that you're doing and just not tracking it, or it might be stuff that you don't even realise that you're doing.
Yeah.
For example, every time you have a really milky coffee from your local coffee shop, you might have a couple of biscuits when you get back to the office with it. It might always be someone's birthday on a Thursday, so it's a little slice of cake. When you're cooking dinner at home, you're having a little bit of something. Maybe you've got some kids, maybe you eat their leftovers. All these things on their own aren't very big, but they do add up.
Yeah.
They add up across the days and the weeks, and so again, it's just having that awareness. Often liquid calories can be a big cause of this as well. Again, like I said, I mentioned milk in tea and coffee, fruit juices, fizzy drinks, and the dreaded A word, alcohol.
Yeah.
So
I think you're right here. It's like microcheating is the one, and that's when you're sneaking little extras in that you're not really accounting for. But there's also the other side of the coin where it's sneaky calories. So we're not necessarily microcheating, but it's these sneaky calories that kind of get in there across our week. The more oil when we're cooking, and the granolas, which is nice, but higher fat, higher carbohydrate, energy dense foods, the whole milk in coffees, like these types of things. like they do add up. Like you're right. So it's just being aware, isn't it? Like of
peanut butter left on the spoon that's
you're
not using.
If you do it every day, there's a thing. If you're doing it every day, Chloe, if you know, all of a sudden that little bit left on the spoon becomes a heap.
Gets bigger every time.
in there. But yeah, like the kids ones.
Have you started eating all of Finn's leftovers yet?
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. No, I just make him extra because I know I'm going to eat it. So now it's like 2 slices of peanut butter and toast, and I'm like, But I did notice it the other day. Like I was licking make him breakfast early in the morning, almost before I've eaten, and I'm licking the knife, and I finish his toast, and I'm like, this is probably going to help me because I need to get a little bit stronger and a bit bigger, like as always. So actually, I probably do need to micro cheat to get my calories up there because I don't eat enough. So, but I do. It is something that I know it's a throwaway comment, eating kids' meals, but I genuinely notice how it could add up quite quickly. And it's that mindless thing. That's what we want people to be aware of. Again, we're not pointing fingers. We're just making you aware that it is that mindless snacking. It is eating while cooking. Like I do this. A couple of olives when you're putting it in there. Oh, a little bit of this. And then all of a sudden, like that's in 150 calories. Now, if you're doing that every day, coupled with all the extras on there, then that can make a difference, especially if your calories are relatively low. We've got smaller, men and women out there who are trying to diet. It's challenging, and it will block your progress. So I definitely think that and liquid calories are always the one to it's hard, but if you can make a difference, if you can make a change to removing them, it's going to help.
I think milk in coffee is one of the biggest things. I think that we just don't realise it as well. Like I have a lot of clients, who are doing perhaps 6-week fat loss or something, and then they say, oh, well, I'm having 5 cups of tea a day with semi-skim milk in it. And then you say, well, that's, that could be 150 to 200 calories just in the milk. I had one client who, bless her, she's fantastic, she won't mind me saying, but she was having 2 flat whites a day for ages, and she was like, I'm not losing any weight. And we took them out, and it made a difference. And it's crazy how these things add up. I don't think we actually realise, because it's not, food. We don't, it is, but it's not, in the way we kind of often think. So it does add up.
It does. It really does. And what we want to try and make dieting as easy as possible. So if you can identify these small changes, that's going to allow you to make progress through the diet a lot more efficiently than, oh, here's a load of new recipes that you've got to make and it's all confusing. So identifying a few of these key things that you can just tidy up, I think is an easier way to make progress and probably sustain progress a little bit easier. Once you've lost that weight, don't let these things sneak back in. So yeah, great stuff. Good pointers there. Chloe, on to the next one, number 4.
Yeah, so kind of ties in quite well to that, is portion control and eyeballing and actually knowing how much we're eating. So I think, when we are trying to lose fat, it's important that we need to know how much we're taking in, whether that means tracking calories. I don't think we all need to track calories. It depends where our starting point is, right? But, if we're doing hand portions or something like that, we need to have an awareness of what is in our food and how much of each kind of macronutrient we're eating, because it's so easy to overdo certain foods. And, people often say, well, I eat super healthy. And it's like, I'm sure you do eat super healthy. And they're drizzling, buckets of olive oil on their salad. And they're like, health. And, it is, yes, it's healthy. But that olive oil, the calories add up. And I think people can think that they're maybe using the right portion control. Like if I said to you, just drizzle out 10 mils of olive oil, would you actually really be able to get it on? You probably wouldn't. Yeah. It's taken me years. I've been tracking food for years, and I'm just about at the point where I'm like, that's 15 grams of peanut butter. Always peanut butter for me, isn't it? But it's
not that much, is it?
It's not much at all.
Not much.
And again, like people say, that are struggling, and they're like, oh, I'm not seeing the scale move. And I say, well, are you weighing things out? Are you aware of what you're having? And they're like, oh, well, no, I just had a small amount of avocado. And I'm like, okay, well, we do need to measure these things out because they will add up. And
it's going through the process of tracking to educate yourself, to give yourself the knowledge of how much carbohydrates, protein, fats are in certain foods, the portions that you require. because we're terrible. We're terrible at eyeballing, and we're terrible at eating in moderation. So when you can objectify it and understand, oh, that's how much it fills my plate, that's how much it fills my bowl, like that is 50 grams of carbohydrates in rice and potatoes and oats or whatever. Once you do that, again, like that's a really useful skill to cultivate. And if you can do that, you don't have to track every single gram, but you just have to understand that, oh my God, that's the portion size. So, you know, I think that people can go through that. If they're struggling to lose weight and have been following a diet for a while, then doing that and just understanding, well, I don't need to track everything, but if you can just do a couple of the more regular meals, then, you know, that's definitely something. One client, I always tell the story on my presentation, so apologies if you come to one. Spaghetti bolognese. Once he entered it in, it was 1,200 calories, one serving. And everyone goes, no way, there's no way you can eat 1,200 calories. And I'm like, okay, 15% mince, olive oil in cooking, cooked it up, spaghetti. It's quite hard to portion control spaghetti because you're having loads. And then what does he do?
You want to tell my mum that?
Yeah, no, yeah, exactly, yeah. ladling it on. And then what does he top it with? Loads of Parmesan. So all of a sudden, it's a really energy-dense meal. Now, spaghetti bolognese is a great meal to have, but you've got to be just aware that portion control with this type of thing is quite challenging. So that's when I say go for a little bit of education in terms of just trying to identify that portion control. But look, Tom, we don't need to track calories and macros, right? We're on a new program, Fat Loss Simplified, that doesn't require calories and macros. So how can people go around portion control without having to use an app or anything?
I definitely think stripping things back a little bit and building meals and recipes using ingredients rather than, again, trying to find something that's very complicated and there's the more ingredients and more things that are going in your bowl or your plate, there's potentially more things you can overportion. So if you strip things back and have a source of protein and it fills about a quarter of your plate or about the palm of your hand, I think carbohydrates and fats are the ones to be most aware of, like the spaghetti, rice, potatoes. But by using kind of 4 or 5 ingredients to build a meal, it's then a lot easier to see how much you need on the plate, how you feel on that. And like we said about if everything is a little bit random, sometimes it's hard to identify what's working well. So, stripping things back, keeping things simple, and then you can make some small tweaks and changes from there. Yeah,
definitely. There's multiple ways to employ portion control. I mean, I don't really adhere to eating off smaller plates. I know that's one that people use, but it's going to keep going back for seconds and thirds. But if you can have an idea of what your plate should look like from a portion control, like so segmenting it in your mind to be like, okay, it's this many carbohydrates like on that kind of third of the plate or quarter of the plate, or you know, this many veggies, and my protein kind of fills it there. Again, that gives you an understanding, whereas if you don't know that and everything's a bit random, then you potentially can overeat. Again, if you use hands and if you use, you know, this in terms of building you on your plate, so you then understand how much that is, I think that's a really good idea. Like, it's a good starting point of saying keeps it a little bit more simple rather than numbers. But if you're going down the calorie and macro route, you got to go through the education. And once you do it, then you can start to eyeball. So now Chloe knows how much 15 grams of protein is of peanut butter. And like I said, it's not that much. And I bet when you first did it, you're like, no way. There's no way it's this little. But that's what, again, potentially blocks people from losing weight. And it's the hard truth, isn't it, sometimes? These things that, you know, they're energy dense, some of these foods, and they can really prevent your progress. So, good stuff. A little bit of education on portion control. And it's hard. But once you do it, it's in there. It's in there. You've got it in the bank. Yeah. Chloe, Tom, let's hit us with one more, buddy.
I want to talk about kind of the scales and body composition. It's quite a big topic, so I might kind of, you know, dissect this up, split this out between the three of us here. But, you know, fat loss and weight loss, to me, are maybe different things.
Yeah.
And I, again, just commonly what I see is clients putting all their, what I call progress eggs, into one basket, and they jump on the scales, they cross their fingers, and they're praying for a good result. And potentially they don't maybe weigh in a consistent manner as well. So they might weigh on a Tuesday morning, they might then leave it kind of 10 days, they might jump on a Thursday lunchtime, or they do a Sunday morning, and it doesn't show the bigger picture. And your weight will always fluctuate based upon potentially what you eat, what you drank the day before, if you're stressed. I know Chloe works with a lot of female clients, so weight fluctuates weekly, so then trying to compare weeks versus weeks doesn't work. So there could be other things going on. We often see clients' performance go up in the gym, even on a fat loss program, because we get them to eat better around their training, so maybe they're building muscle. So what I want to get people to think about is just how are you tracking and monitoring progress, and what can you do to get a better overall picture of your weight loss and fat loss than just that set of bathroom scales that you've got.
Yeah, I think it's good. Like I said, fat loss isn't a linear process. So if you're taking snapshots, it's you catch yourself on a bad day. So the alternative is to weigh yourself every day and look at trends. But Chloe, like you say, you've worked with people that, what if someone doesn't want to step on the scale every day? What can they do?
Yeah, I find that the more we, obviously, in terms of stepping on a scale and stuff, the more we do look at it as just data, because obviously people tend to wrap their weight up in who they are as a person. It becomes such a personal thing, isn't it? I think the more you do it, the more it does just become data. And if you actually can weigh every day, it's so useful. But then, I actually spoke to a couple of girls this morning who are keeping track on fat loss programs by looking at measurements. That's a really great way to do it. Some don't even look at all measurements; they just look at waist measurement, which I think is great for seeing if if your scale weight hasn't changed, but your waist measurement has gone down. I think that's a great one as well to kind of check that we obviously haven't gained fat. Maybe it is muscle, but measurements, taking pictures, how a certain pair of jeans fits or how clothes fit, and just I think how you feel in your body. We can always tell, can't we? We know how our bodies feel. And just kind of doing that. So I think pictures are one of the most valuable things, because if the scale doesn't change, it tells you a lot. So I would say pictures and measurements are great.
I'd agree with the pictures. It's something that, again, we don't ask anyone to post pictures online, or we don't post any, but I think it gives you, it's like seeing a kid, isn't it? Like seeing your niece or nephew, you don't see him for 3 weeks, and then you notice a change, but the parent doesn't. The parent doesn't see that daily change. So you going, I feel like I'm making progress, so I'm feeling all right. But if you've got an image of you 3 weeks ago or 3 months ago, and you take another one, you're like, wow, okay, I didn't realise I used to look like that. Or, oh my God, I couldn't, quite believe the progress that I've made. And the scale might not reflect that. It might have not changed that much because muscle mass might have gone up or whatever. So again, we want to be thinking about what is going to be working for you. And like I say, as long as you're tracking some form of progress, I think that's a good thing. You did mention a point I want to expand on there, is taking the emotion out of it. I think it's easier said than done, but taking the emotion and making it data, I think, is a good thing, because then it's just like, I weigh myself, I put it in, and then it's just like, okay, I'm looking at trends and what's percentages and what's happening, rather than that's what's happened today, And I think if you can take the emotion out of it, I think it is a useful thing to do.
I think one thing on that as well, if someone does, I don't know, eat more at the weekend or whatever, or they do something which they're like, okay, well, I'm not going to weigh tomorrow, even though I'm meant to, because I'm going to weigh more. I actually think it can be quite powerful if you've had a big weekend and you've had more food. Step on the scale, because then you are aware that you're like, well, I'm weighing heavier because I literally just have more food in my body. It's like if I go and make a plate of food and I stand on the scale with it, but then I put the food away. Do you know what I mean? That food in my body is going to weigh just like as if I'm holding it. Or I think people need to maybe understand that if you put food in your body you're going to weigh heavier. If you have more water in your body. And so I think actually weighing when you expect to perhaps be a bit heavier can be powerful, because then you can see what happens when you do eat more. And it's obviously you have to be quite strong to do that, but I think it can be quite useful.
Yeah, I think, like you say, I think it's right. I think it's understanding your body, isn't it? We've had clients that gain 2.5 kilos overnight, you know, like by eating a massive 3-course meal and drinking a little bit more, they can gain 2.5 kilos. Doesn't mean they gain 2.5 kilos of fat in one evening. So it's that awareness again of like, how does your body react to this? And then you can see, oh my God, how many days it takes for you to get back to normal. Like, and it will drop 1.5 kilos, 1 kilo, and then by Wednesday you're back to normal. But again, you haven't gained that fat. And I think that understanding is a really powerful thing.
It's good data to have down the line when you see your weight go up again, and you're like, well, okay, I know why. So
yeah, definitely. I think it brings on to our last point that we got on the list is, you know, gaining fat and losing muscle. But that could happen. But losing fat and gaining muscle, that's potentially, you know, something that isn't gonna, you know, that you're not losing weight. And Tom, you kind of alluded it to earlier. You know, you can do this, and actually you might be kind of gaining a little bit, you know, especially if performance is going up on a fat loss program. We've seen it time and time again. I know a lot of the research out there says it only happens in kind of untrained, you know, individuals, but it can also happen when people have followed a really poor diet and a poor training program for an extended period of time, and they actually then dial things in, and then we can kind of see the results, isn't it?
Yeah, where we see people, like say, fuel their training sessions, what they're eating pre and post workout, maybe a little bit better protein distribution across the day, the quality of the diet goes up, so their recovery improves. So in those training sessions, they start to do a little bit more weight on the bar, a few more reps in the workout, so they get a better stimulus and response from their training. So yeah, we commonly see it where people are like, I'm not really losing weight on the scale, but they're like, I can, you know, I've dropped 3 holes on my jeans, or that dress that I couldn't get into 4 or 5 weeks ago, I fit into it more comfortably. So take a step back and, like I say, identify, if you're trying to lose weight, are you trying to actually lose weight, or are you just trying to get leaner and potentially lose body fat?
Yeah.
And that might help understand then what metrics you actually would suit you better to track, like we said, progress pictures, measurements, performance in the gym, etc.
Yeah, 100%. Like, you know, I think you're right. The body recomposition side of things of losing fat and gaining muscle is achievable. But again, if you focus on just getting stronger, like, you know, Chloe, you work with a lot of women that just we're coming away from kind of focusing just on losing fat and actually increasing their performance. And yeah, it's a bit more of a subjective approach, isn't it? But you can still track objective stuff in the gym, and energy levels, and, you know, you check-in forms that we use can still objectify things like that, can't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, which gives you data then to kind of look on progress. So energy levels generally in day, how did you training performance, you know, recovery, these types of things. If you can objectify them, and again, this helps you to kind of track progress rather than just focusing on jumping on the scale. So, yeah, I think that's great. Anything else, guys, that you have on the list, or you've seen that may be of impacting people not losing weight?
I think people can get a bit disheartened when it comes down to how quickly they expect weight to maybe fall off.
Yeah.
I think people get so focused, and maybe this comes back again to standing on the scale, they get so focused on the outcomes, they're not maybe looking at just the processes, and there's always things that might be out of their control. Let's say maybe metabolic rate versus when they were younger, or, you know, maybe there is external stressors and things going on. So look at what you are doing well, look at those processes, and is it just you have to be a little bit more consistent, a little bit more patient for a little bit longer, a bit more of the long game, but you're more likely to stay at your kind of goal weight or goal dress size, jean size when you get there, rather than on this kind of constant yo-yo dieting where you're losing weight, gaining weight.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's one thing that I see with a lot of people is that the understanding that at the start, fat loss can be relatively quick. The longer that you go on to something, the longer the plateaus occur, and then the smaller the drops are. So then it becomes frustrating because you're expecting these 2, 3, 4, 5 kilo drops in relatively short time frames, when in reality that's not going to happen ever again, because you've already shifted some of that weight, water weight, body fat, etc. So then as you get leaner, these periods where the weight or the scale doesn't necessarily move can be a little bit longer. And like I say, then this little progress drops are quite small, and people can get super frustrated. The problem is then that they get more aggressive with their diets to try and, you know, to copy what happened at the start. And that's a really challenging thing. That's going into the psychology of fat loss more than anything then, because people are trying to, you know, be super aggressive. And metabolism is probably a whole other conversation for another podcast, but it's to understand that the longer that you're in it, like I say, the shorter the progress is going to be kind of harder to come by, you know, the longer you go down that road. But again, we don't want people to be on that road forever. You know, you kind of want to get on it short periods, and then the rest of the time you just want to be on the road to gaining performance, getting stronger, more energized, and working on other areas of your nutrition. You know, if you can do that, then hopefully you've got a bit more longevity in following a nutrition plan and stuff like that. So I think that's where we want to go. Chloe, you've been kind of prepping and dieting for a competition, and now what's your weight done? Have you had days where it's fluctuated up and down, and you've been a bit frustrated? Like what's
my God!
Going on?
Oh, honestly, constantly. Like I remember when I first started prepping. I mean, this was early days. I think it took a really long time for it to initially drop. It was dropping a little bit, but nothing was really happening, even though I'd, you know, reduced my food, changed my training, done all the right things in terms of stimulus, and I could see changes physically, but again, the scale just wasn't. It took a long time for it to budge, and then, you know, even after a month or so, didn't change anything, and suddenly had like a massive drop. And if I look back at all my weights and everything, it's just gone in this kind of, you know, big dip, sudden plateau, and it's whether you change anything or not. Sometimes that's just how your body reacts to things based on all the other things going on in your life. As you know, as I mentioned about having more food, as soon as I was done with my show, I went and had some food, which was excellent, very tasty, lots of cookies. Also, you know, a nice meal out with my family, and the next day, or I didn't weigh myself for a couple of days, but then, you know, a couple of days later I was heavier. But that's the way it is. It's normal. I have more food in me. I have more glycogen in my muscles. I have more water, maybe probably a little bit of fat there because I ate quite a lot of food. But, you know, that's just the way it is. And now it's coming back down again because, you know, you go back into these cycles. But, you know, it's going to go up and down, and it's going to fluctuate. And I think for me, because, you know, I've had problems in the past with like getting wrapped up in the scale and food and stuff, and I've found weighing myself more often has just completely changed my outlook on it. And actually I do see it as data now, even if some days I get on the scale and I'm like, oh God, I'm like, okay, it's just, you know, I'm a bit inflamed. Like last week I, you know, had a really strong week of training and dieting, and at the end of the week I was the same weight as at the beginning, and I was like, well, that can't be right. It's just inflammation, and it's completely normal. So I think it's just knowing that happens.
But knowing that happens, but then also understanding that there was real positives that week. Training was good. It's not all about, like, say, you can't only be happy when the scale moves. Like if you're doing that, then you're on a road to like being quite unhappy for an extended period of time. So you said I had a really strong training week. Cool. You know, that for me is something that you need to put at the top of the tree and focus on, which you have done. Yeah. So, you know, I think that's really good. I also think, like, just kind of wrapping things up, is I think people set these big goals, don't they? Like weight. So like, I want to lose 10 kilos. And then they're only really happy if they get to that 10 kilo mark. Whereas if you broke it down and potentially kind of put in, right, so say I'm 72 kilos and I want to get to 65, okay? Then if you set the first goal is to get under 70, and then give yourself a big pat on the back, and then assess what's next and how you're going to move forward, because things will probably change once you get lost that 2-3 kilos of what you need to do, and then work towards, right, next thing is 1.5 kilos, next thing is 2 kilos. Because if you give yourself reward, it enhances motivation. Whereas if you got to 69 kilos and didn't really acknowledge that you're going to, you know, well done, mate, I've just lost 3 kilos. If you're like, well, it's all right, I'm not happy until I hit my goal of 65. As you said, you're plateaued for quite a long time. So if you're not identifying the positives, I think people can put so much pressure on themselves and deny themselves being happy and deny themselves more motivation until they actually achieve that goal. So trying to break it down, like I say, and focusing on either smaller weight goals or positives in other areas in the scales, I think is going to help people to be a bit more successful with their diets.
Yeah.
Cool. Lovely stuff. I think that was fantastic. So here's, there were six reasons we kind of spoke about there. I think the best thing to do is just to identify, again, we're not finger pointing, it's just making it aware that the common things that we see with clients that prevent them to losing weight. So maybe go back through, identify a couple that maybe you're definitely doing, and go like, right, do you know what? I'm going to tidy that up. I'm just going to get a little bit more dialed in with 1 or 2 areas, rather than thinking that you've got to overhaul your whole diet and change, lots of different things. It's normally small little changes, small little tweaks done consistently that are going to help you to see progress. Cool. Thank you very much, guys. Tom,
yeah,
all good with that?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Good to chat. Like I say, keep it simple. Yeah. 1 or 2 things. Go from there.
Lovely stuff. Thanks so much, Chloe. Thanks so much, everyone. So, look, if you like this episode, please share it. If you've got any more questions, then pop us a message on Instagram or on email. We've got lots of different content on, weight loss and how to do it in the correct way on our Instagram. So definitely kind of go through that and scroll back, look at some of the previous posts. And